There we are. So once again, welcome, bienvenue, and miigwech to everyone. Welcome to our latest presentation from the Historical Society of Ottawa. Tonight, our guest speaker is, see if I can find it where I've got here, Wendy Alexis, and she will be talking about the day my students met Mandela, about Nelson Mandela's 1998 visit to Ottawa. But I'm not going to introduce Wendy. I'm going to let someone else do that, someone who's known Wendy for a long time. I'm going to introduce June Girvan. And June is the president of Black History Ottawa. It's an organization devoted to promoting education and research on the accomplishments of Canadians of African descent. On top of that, June is also the founder of the Jinakira I knew I would get this wrong. Jinakira Dinkunesh Education Center. I hope that's right. Which is at Besserer and Frail in Sandy Hill, of the old building there. And the Education Center runs programs that foster intercultural understanding, racial harmony, and social justice. June is also a recipient of the Order of Ontario and also the Ottawa City Builder Award. So Ben, it looks like we might have another future guest speaker on our hand, but for now I will welcome June Girvan. You there, June?
Thank you. Thank you. It's a big, huge pleasure for me to introduce Wendy. And I'll just read her formal introduction that the Jinakira Dinkunesh Education Center, Every Child is Sacred, was pleased to offer to Wendy on Human Rights Day, December 10, 2020. So the recognition is in the spirit of Grandfather William Commanda, John Peters Humphrey, and George Clarkson Wilkes. The JDEC-ECI's Reconciliation Day in Ottawa marks the UN International Human Rights Day and is a tribute to Algonquin elder Grandfather William Commanda and his philosophy, a circle of all nations, a culture of peace. John Peters Humphrey, fellow Canadian who drafted the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights and who is known as the father of modern day human rights. Many people don't know that the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights was actually drafted by a fellow Canadian. George Clarkson Wilkes of Sandy Hill, he left us a legacy, and his legacy is the Canadian Tribute to Human Rights, which is located on Algonquin territory, site of Ottawa City Hall. Etched in its granite facade, in English and French, is the first sentence of Article 1 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. The words equality, dignity, and rights are etched into the granite walls in French and English and in 73 languages of the Indigenous people of Canada. On September 24th, 1998, the 50th anniversary of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, Grandfather William Commanda, George Clarkson Wilkes, and President Nelson Mandela stood together on the tribute. President Nelson Mandela unveiled a plaque to honor John Peters Humphrey. And on that day, teacher Wendy Alexis and her young charges were there. The young children were serving under the watch of their young adult role models. As President Mandela's honor guard, all were under the watch of the Ottawa Police, the RCMP, and the South African Security. The event was organized by the Jinakira Dinkunesh Education Center and was sponsored by the Black Business and Professional Association of Ottawa, thanks to President Thomas James. The honor guard and their young adult role models wore red t-shirts with Mandela's name, Rakshashala, emblazoned in white. Each child carried a branch of autumn maple leaves. The maple leaves came from branches of trees in Rockwell Heights, where I used to live. These children of the maple leaves, children of all human colors of the sun, along with their protective older young adult role models, made history that day. Everyone was excited. President Mandela was a low security risk. Still, guarding Mandela had nerves a little on edge. An anchor was needed. Sergeant John Kiss of the Ottawa Police Service was our anchor, a low-key, steady, stabilizing presence he was. I was nervous too. I was grateful to experience Officer Kiss and the officers from South African Police and the RCMP and the Ottawa Police all serving to protect the young children. The children of the Maple Leaf had made history. In December, to mark Human Rights Day and the JDEC's Reconciliation Day in Ottawa, we reconvened at the Great Hall of the Canadian Museum of Civilization. Among the totems led by Wendy Alexis' students, the children of the Maple Leaf shared reminiscences of September 28. They offered the book of memories and reflections they had put together. They entitled their book Madiba, Mandela's honorary ancestral name. The album was filled with their writings and drawings, sharing their memories of their time guarding Madiba, who they said felt like a grandfather to them. He and they had projected their humanity out to one another, a true Ubuntu exchange between an elderly man of Africa and young children of Canada, a true Ubuntu exchange for children to carry into their own old age and remember. Their teacher, Wendy Alexis, had laid the groundwork for that exchange. The children nurtured humanity. The children's nurtured humanity is there in their Madiba writings. In these writings, led by their teacher, Wendy Alexis, are manifest the spiritual and social culture of the classroom. With no embarrassment, they openly, simply, eloquently express their inborn, unsuppressed empathy for another's suffering, their wonder at human resilience and endurance. They hoped to be like Mandela in the face of their life's challenges. These children of the Maple Leaf, children of different human colors of the sun, brought together in teachers Wendy Alexis's classroom, expressed their confusion. Why, they asked, why was a person's skin color making a difference in how they're treated? Why is skin color the cause of injustices? They hope to be like Mandela, kind, respectful, and loving. I listened to them at the Museum of Civilization. I heard them querying, why was skin color the cause of injustices? I watched them interact with one another. There was an openness, a distinct lack of embarrassment in expressing their own humanity and recognizing the humanity in others, beginning with one another and extended to others from afar, like Nelson Mandela. With their unsuppressed, uninhibited, unembarrassed, empathic style of being, it was easy to get a value-based portrait of their teacher, her own moral compass, and the safe, every child is sacred classroom community they experienced in their day-to-day life in their classroom community with Wendy Alexis. Today I remember and I honor Wendy Alexis, whose young charges are now adults, making their own empathic difference in the world. Today, I'm very pleased once again to honor fellow educator, Wendy Alexis.
Whoa.
To you, Wendy.
Oh, so I start now?
Yes, please.
Okay, first of all, thank you, June. I don't actually know what to say now. Let me thank, first of all, say thank you to Ben and to Richard and to Lynn, who have been certainly more than patient with me. And thank you to all of you from the Historical Society of Ottawa for allowing me to speak with you tonight. Really, really special thanks to June Girvan, because she is the one who made this connection possible in the first place. So when Ben asked me to do this, he mentioned that COVID had caused a change in in your presentation format that you used to gather in person in a smaller or larger room. And he sent me a link so that I could look at some of the other presentations. So when I did that, I saw things that were formal, things that were more informal. And I realized I'm not going to be very good at either one of those, because if you're coming into my home, then this is going to be very, very casual. So normally we'd probably be sitting at my kitchen table, but there's too much traffic there, as well as two big crazy dogs. So I brought you upstairs here to my little oasis in my house, which is just called my reading room. So it's kind of like a little library that's filled with some treasures from my life. And it's actually the closest thing that I have to the back of my old classroom. And that's the place where we had a big comfy couch. We had quilts on the walls made by former students. I had a tree stump as my chair, and a carpet, big cushions on the floor for the kids to gather. And on the side, we had a huge map of the world. Oops, is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. We had a huge map of the world made of these giant kind of rubber pieces. And you could see where the kids had traced the boundaries of their countries. And the lines between the countries were so faint because they had been so lovingly touched by the children who called those countries home. So some of the boundaries were even erased between them. And who did we have in that class? We had the entire world. We had so many countries, so many languages, so many nationalities represented. And the kids did not call that their grade 6 class or their grade 3 class or whatever grade I was teaching. They simply called it Wendy's World. So what I'm doing tonight is welcoming you to Wendy's World. Relax, get comfortable. I hope you have a glass of wine or tea or something like that. And I'm just going to share some cool stories with you as if you were my friend visiting me in my house. So this is Wendy's World, and who exactly is Wendy? Despite all the grandiose things that June Girvan said, I'm not that much. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a competitive athlete. I'm always a teacher, but still a student. And I'm someone who cares very much about justice and injustice. I truly, truly care about our world and the people in it, especially those who are often left behind. So I just want to be the teacher for a second. I'm not sure if you know, but in the Ontario curriculum, from grades 1 to 6, there is no history actually taught as history. It's called social studies. And it focuses on very distinct separate periods of time, and mostly on the people who are part of that time. So grade 3 has a focus on the pioneers. I think it's grade 5 has a focus on the Egyptians. But there's very little context given to all of this, and there's really nothing to tie those units together. And in our board, in the Ottawa Catholic Board, they're taught in French. So technically, social studies was not mine to teach. History was not mine to teach. But because of who I had in my class, and because of the focus that we had on world events, current events, social justice, and how the countries of those kids fit into that, exploring history in our class was really inescapable and inevitable. So these kids that we're going to talk about tonight were children who attended a school that no longer exists, a little hidden gem in Alta Vista called Immaculate Heart of Mary. There was a mixture of kids there. Some lived in the area. Most of them did not. They were bused in from the nearby projects. So many were immigrants, and of those, most were refugees. So in Wendy's World, it would take about 3 days before we saw a sign like this one. I would put something on the board or we'd be sitting at the back in Wendy's world, and I'd have a whiteboard and hold it up and write the word history and ask what they thought that meant. And they gave very predictable answers. So they said history is about old stuff, often boring stuff. History was about dead people. It was about the past. And if I asked questions, like, where do you get history from? They would say books. And who teaches it to you? Who do you learn it from? They would say teachers. So I would ask them then to just look at the word history again. Oops. Yeah, it's not changing. Oh, no. And this is what they would come up with. So eventually we would circle the his and we would circle the story. And pretty soon they would start saying things like, oh, so history actually is his story or her story or my story or your story or our story or their story. And as soon as they heard that history was about a story, then they were more interested, because from the time kids are born, what do they want to hear? They want to hear stories, and they want to tell their stories too. So I'm going to tell you our story today of our day with Nelson Mandela, and this is through personal mementos and memories. So in the lead up to this, June alluded to it, but as I remember from our experience, it all happened very quickly. So Mandela was going to be visiting Ottawa, but he was coming through Washington and meeting with the president, then going to New York and addressing the United Nations, coming to Ottawa, speaking in the House of Commons, and then on to Toronto, where he would launch the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. So, of course, because Mandela's visit to Ottawa was going to create history, this was his second visit, we had been learning about him since the first day of school, which was great for the African kids in the class because they already knew so much compared to their white Canadian-born classmates. So at the last minute, I got a call from June at Nikera Dinkanesh, essentially saying, we need kids. What do you have? Because Mandela was coming to Canada to launch his children's fund. And although there were several quick events that were planned for Ottawa, there were no events that involved children. So, and she also asked, was there time to make something? So could we do something, write something, make something quickly that possibly could be presented to him? And this was fast, though. I think we had a maximum of 3 days. And it might not have even been 3 days. So, and then the other question was, could she get some kids? Now, at our school, because most of these kids really didn't have a lot. They didn't have cars. A lot of them were quite poor. And we had to be downtown very early in the morning, I think before 5 a.m. So public transportation was not an option. It was going to be difficult to arrange for a lot of kids to be able to go. So we got what we could. And of course, they were thrilled. And the kids also had to be of a certain age. So I think at the time I was teaching grade 3, 4, and 5, or grade 4 and 5. We had a small school, so we taught multiple grades. But my son was also in grade 4. So my son, Jordan, got to be one of those kids as well. So ahead of time, we wrote letters. All the kids in the school from grade 3 to 6 were very excited that Mandela was coming. They already had a huge background in this because we've been talking about it since the first day of school. So they didn't have much time to write these letters because they had to do 3 copies because they never got away with doing one. So we did 1 copy for Nelson Mandela in case it could be presented to him. We did 1 copy for June so that she would have it. And because I'm the teacher and I want to keep a record of everything, they had to do 1 copy for me. So to get kids to do 3 good copies of anything is actually very difficult. They couldn't make any mistakes. They were writing out their letter. They were drawing pictures to go with it. But at the same time, they were thrilled because this was for somebody that they really had a huge amount of respect and admiration for. So on the day of, I happened to find, just when I was preparing for this, I happened to find an old folder up in my little oasis, and it has a bunch of little mementos from that day that belonged to my son. So we had a picture of Nelson Mandela, and just looking at this jogged a lot of memories for me. So sometime before 5 a.m. on the day of, we had to meet downtown at Elgin Street. And we had to be allowed into that area because he was a visiting dignitary. So the perimeter had been sealed the night before. And that meant that all of the mailboxes had been removed and things like that. So as I recall, it was actually fairly cool. This was the end of September, but it was pretty cold. Everybody's wearing jackets, and there was a buzz when we got there, just this buzz of excitement. So very quickly, the kids were taken from the parents and moved to an area that was closer to the Human Rights Monument. The parents were allowed to stay at the front of the general viewing area. And so when the kids were taken away, they were given some instructions, and because they were going to form a children's guard of honor for Mandela to walk through. So one of the things they received was a copy of the Declaration of Human Rights. They also received these badges that they could wear with the South African and Canadian flags. They received an official badge, which made them feel very cool. So this is my son's. And this is a very faded version of the leaves that were actually on the branch that my son waved when Mandela came through. And here is my son waiting. So this was before. The branches, the maple leaf branches, were actually a genius idea because these were all fairly young kids. And while they're waiting, you really want to put something in their hands to keep them busy. So aside from looking beautiful and looking very Canadian, it kept the kids occupied. So as the time for Mandela's arrival got closer, the kids were lined up in 2 rows facing each other to form an honor guard. And Mandela would pass through that on his way to the Human Rights Monument where he was going to speak. Now, in this picture, there's a choir, the Sifa choir, the African choir, was performing before Mandela's arrival. And suddenly, everything gets very quiet. There's this flurry of activity. There are plainclothes police officers speaking into walkie-talkies. There are others scanning the crowd, others standing at attention. And a hush falls over everybody. But there's this energy in the air because we know the motorcade is coming. Now, what I need to explain here is a really personal experience. This is my personal experience of Mandela's arrival. So one of the police officers there was named Sergeant Doug Kirkland. And he was always involved in special events in Ottawa. And I knew him. So when we arrived in the morning, he saw us there very early. I was there with my family, my other kids, and my husband. And he said, why are you here so early? And I told him that my son was part of this, and so were my students. So he said, would you like to get closer? And I said, sure, how close can I get? So he took me up to the special section that was very close to the part where Mandela's car would be coming in. And I guess what he told me was, stay here and you'll get some good pictures. So in my mind, though, he said, stay here so that you can get some good pictures. So as Mandela's motorcade comes in, and there's this real flurry of activity, and he gets out of the car, I actually took a step off of the curb into the street, and I bent down with my camera to take some pictures. And as soon as I did it, there were two plainclothes guys that jumped out of nowhere. One holds a gun on me and says, "Get her out of here." So my police officer friend, Doug Kirkland, bundles me off to the side, gave me a piece of his mind very quickly and said, "Don't move." So needless to say, I didn't get very good pictures. I had a good view from where I was, but I didn't get great pictures. So you're going to be able to just see pretty much what I saw. So the circles, the blue circles, are the one in the middle is around Mandela as he's walking through the Children's Honor Guard. And remember, this was the old days too, so I didn't have a good camera or anything. This was just a regular little camera. So I had to have been pretty close even to be able to get this. And the other guy who's circled on the left, he was the one that pointed the gun at me. So, so some of the things that happened after that, as Mandela passed through the Honor Guard and on his way to the monument, are a little fuzzy because I was still a little rattled from the gun thing. And disappointed that I didn't get any great pictures. But I did see Mandela stop and speak to every child as he passed by. And I asked my son Jordy after what he said to him. And he said, "I was so nervous, I thought I might throw up on his feet." So he said, I can't actually remember what he said to me. He said, "I didn't want to throw up on him, but when he touched me, and I looked up at his face, I felt like I was listening to my grandpa." And that still remains, he's 32 now, and that still remains one of the most moving experiences of his life. So it was equally moving for the students in my class. This is truly, truly something they never imagined and something they could never forget. So in the middle of that picture, that's Mandela at the monument. Again, that's as close as I could be. And there's June circled in the middle with a whole bunch of kids. So this was just following, I think, the event. This is a picture that all of the kids got after the whole thing was over. So you can actually see, you can see most of the kids' faces in there. So it's just a collage, but it was a very cool, it was a cool keepsake. There's Jordy after, and he's with the ambassadors. So June made reference to the ambassadors. They're all of the older kids. So these were teenagers who were like 15, 16 years old. And they're wearing red shirts with Hail to Shasha, which is Mandela's tribal name. And I think part of the idea was that these older kids sort of keep an eye on the younger ones who were not always as responsible as they should be, even though it was a huge event. Now, two of those ambassadors, so these are my three kids, and two of those ambassadors are people that we call cousins, Spirit and Layla, and they're daughters of Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, who is, for you history buffs, she is one of the Little Rock Nine, and she was living in Ottawa at the time. So those are her two youngest kids, and they still remain very close to our family. So, and Jordy being very proud with his leaves, and the kids together. Now, this is a photo that was actually in the paper, and it was taken while Mandela was at the House of Commons, and So this is the mother, Minnie Jean Brown, of those two girls that you just saw in the last two pictures. And she was one of the people who was there to greet and speak to Gracia Machel, who is Mandela's wife. And this was after the event was over, and those are my kids being interviewed by CBC. And then we went for pizza. So that was like the perfect end to a perfect day for three young kids. But this is the cover of the book of letters that June mentioned. And if it's okay with you, I had written the introduction to this, and it just kind of explains what's in here. So I like to read my letter. So this was written to Nelson Mandela. Dear Mr. President, in view of your imminent visit to Toronto to launch Nelson Mandela's Children Fund, you must not leave Ottawa without knowing how you have captured the hearts of children here. You must have great, strong arms, Madiba, to embrace so many. Our school, Immaculate Heart of Mary, is known as the little school with the big heart. When you read these letters written by students in grades 3 to 6, you will understand why. I am very blessed in my own life, Mr. Mandela. I am a mother of 3 and a teacher of many. My own children are biracial and are avid, wise, compassionate students of their own history. My youngest child is thrilled to be among the Children's Guard of Honor that will greet you here in Ottawa this morning. My classroom in the school where I teach is nothing less than a mirror of the world. At last count, 52 nationalities are reflected in the beautiful faces of our 160 students. I am supposed to be their teacher, but in fact, they are mine, for each comes with a story that needs to be told. To some of our students, life has been kind. They awaken every morning, warmed and kissed by the sun. And then there are others. On little legs with heavy burdens, they have already trudged too many miles in their long walk to freedom. Nevertheless, whatever worlds they've come from, they're all children. They're all friends, and they all love you. For them, you are like a dream, or better still, the dreamer. You have lived the nightmare of injustice and oppression, and have awakened to weave those painful threads into a new dream of peace, hope, and reconciliation. You walk before these children as a patriarch, that they might follow in your footsteps, but you reach down and hold their hands like a grandfather, with tenderness and patience. If they are distracted along the path by chasing butterflies, or if they stumble because their strides can't yet match yours, know that they are following you still, playing or dancing or resting in your shadow. Thank you, Madiba. Your life, your sacrifice has changed their world and mine. Sincerely, Wendy Alexis. And I thought what I would do is read some of their letters, because they're all very different. And this is a whole book of letters. So I pretty randomly just chose a few that would represent the different kids that were there. So I'll read these, because if you're not a teacher and you're not used to reading little kids printing, sometimes it takes you a little longer than I do. But anyway, the first one is from Rosetta. So I need to tell you that Rosetta was this really, really beautiful blonde child, blue eyes, long blonde hair. And she was half Chilean and half German, but her sisters were half Chilean and half Tanzanian. And because their father occupied the position that he did, they were considered full members of the Zulu tribe. So this was a very, very mixed, diverse family. And this half Chilean, half German little girl was as African as you could get. So, dear Madiba, I am going to be kind to Black people, and my sisters are Black. They are going to sing for you with the Sifa choir. I am going to see you today. I think you are the best. Love, Rosetta, age 8. The next one is from Sandra. This is a little girl that I taught for 3 years from a beautiful family from Ghana. and she died of sickle cell anemia when she was in grade 7. So I wanted to make sure that hers was read today. Dear Mr. Mandela, I was born in Halifax. I always hear it as a beautiful place. You rule South Africa like you care so much about it. You also care about us and how we feel. You are the best president. I don't know why the old government could be that bad to you. Was it really hard being in jail? I'm glad you're not a prisoner anymore. Yours truly, Sandra, age 8. Dear Madiba, my teacher said that you are the president of South Africa. You have strength and wisdom. I hope you do not retire, Madiba. Madiba, I hope you live well because you are my brother. I am from Sudan and my friend Winston is from Jamaica. I am proud of you. Yours truly, Luau. And this is from Edgar, and I need to tell you about Edgar, the next one. This is a little guy who had just come maybe a year and a half before to Canada, and he came from Rwanda after the genocide. And he was captured by the Interamwe with his mother and his little sister, and they were actually kind of kept as prisoners initially. And he was separated with his cousin in a warehouse from his mom and his aunt and the other women, and listened to the women in the next room being raped, including his mom. And this little guy had a horrific experience, and could not have been more proud that someone from his continent was coming here, and was someone who only wanted to make peace. So he's just a really special little kid. Dear Madiba, so this is a little disjointed. I wish you lived in Canada so everyone who are interested about you. I'm one of them. I am happy about what you did. You should be the president of the earth because you are the most peaceful man. I think you should be the boss of everyone. Yours truly, Edgar, age 8. So now this is Winston. This is Lual's friend who just mentioned him before. Dear Madiba, you are the most remarkable person on the face of the earth. You stood up for your country, but you got put in jail for 27.5 years. In 1990, you came out of jail, proud and joyful. 4 years later, you became president. Now that you're president, you could change the laws. My name is Winston. I am 9 years old. I'm in grade 3. I would do the same thing if I were you. You are the most inspiring man known to the world. Yours truly, Winston, with a lion at the bottom that's roaring. The next one is a little bit messy, but this little girl named Tatiana had only come to Canada. She arrived in Canada at the end of August. This is towards the end of September. And she came to school and didn't speak. She didn't speak at all. And she refused to speak, but she had been really traumatized before they left. She's from Congo. And she was really traumatized before she left because the government was hunting down members of the previous regime. And her grandfather was one of them. So the families of those people were at risk. And her mother knew that they were being targeted. And the night before they left, there were heads that were put at the end of their lane, indicating that they were being hunted now. They would be next. And so violence was very real for this child, and she just did not speak. But she wanted to write a letter to Mandela, and she wrote it in French because she couldn't write it in English. But I'll just read the English version. But it said, "Dear Mr. President, everybody knows that you are a wonderful president. My name is Tatiana. I just arrived in Canada only a month ago. I come from Zaire, where there is war and many people who are dead. Mr. Mandela, everyone knows also that you are strong and courageous. You are truly the Lion of Africa." Tatiana, age 7.5. The person who who drew this picture is the same person who wrote the letter. So this is Shane, and he was a Canadian kid. Dear Mr. President, in class, my teacher, Mrs. Alexis, talks about Black history all the time. She is the one that made me aware of all the stuff going on in the world and how Blacks are treated unfairly. I think that it was very heroic when you refused to go out of jail until all the other ANC people were released from jail. I don't know why people treat Blacks differently. Half my friends are Black and the only difference is the color of their skin. I hope that someday everyone will be treated equally. Yours truly, Shane. This is another little Canadian guy. Dear Mr. Mandela, you are the lion of my heart, the courage in my bones. You have saved your people. You are the savior of all African Blacks. You are the best of the best. You are the African lion who roars in the afternoon. If I could be like you, I would do everything humanly possible to make peace around the world. Yours truly, Andrew H. 10. Dear Madiba, this was a little Lebanese girl. Dear Madiba, I hear many people say that if they could have one wish, they would wish for world peace. But what many people do not know is that world peace is not a wish, it is a miracle. You have helped your people fight for what is right. I look up to you because of that. Maybe someday all nations will come together and live as one nation. I will follow in your footsteps and in the footsteps of all those who try to make peace throughout the world. Someday you shall go, but your legend will stay forever. Yours truly, Paula. I won't read all of this, but this is like just a regular kid, pretty much saying he's amazed at what Mandela could do. He said, I don't think I could ever change the world as you have. What you have done is so great. I can't even get my brother to clean up his mess. You know, so these are regular little guys. I wish for you in South Africa to never have apartheid or injustice again. I also wish that the Eritrean Ethiopian war would stop because my friends and classmates are from all over Africa. Yours truly, David. We had a lot of kids who were from Eritrea, so they had fled war as well. So he was very close friends with those kids. So that's why it was meaningful to him. Dear Madiba, Lord bless you. You fought for your country against the white government, like a lion fighting for your country, justice, and freedom. You are a great hero. I hope that the crime of apartheid never happens again anywhere in the world. I am African too, from Ghana, and I am proud that we are brothers. Yours truly, Michael. Dear Madiba, you are a great person to the Black people of the world. You are a hero, especially to Black people all over the world, for being brave in the face of the people who put you in jail. History will show that you are the man who has always held his people in his hands. In my life, I try to be like you, fair, kind, generous, and not to make people feel bad. I'm a Black Eritrean in grade 5. I am 10 years old, and I am proud of myself and South Africa, and I hope that you keep growing strong like a tree. Yours truly, Salam. And this is the last one. This is from Catherine, who is now a teacher in our school board. Dear Madiba, you are everyone's light that shines on in our world. You are a role model for everyone, especially me. You are an outstanding human being who stands up for what you believe in. You are the bravest lion of Africa I have ever seen. For you to go through that, you must have 2 angels by your side. Your wisdom and strength will break through those concrete jail cell walls that were 2 feet thick. No walls, no chains, no bars. Nothing could ever keep your message from being heard. I will never forget you, Mr. President. Yours truly, Catherine. Okay, where am I? So after all of this was over, and June also mentioned there was a reception later on, a couple months later, all of the kids received a certificate and a book. And this book is one that was special. It was created for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and you couldn't buy it here. I think it only came out of South Africa. So for the kids to have a book like this to keep as a souvenir was actually a very big deal. And I used it for years and years to teach in my class. Sorry, I think I just, okay. Sorry, I think I just lost something here. Can you guys just give me a second?
Okay, well, while you're looking for something, let me just let people know I haven't got any questions yet. So don't be shy, folks. If you have any questions you want to ask Wendy, now's the chance to do it.
Okay, I found my stuff, thanks. So yeah, there was this wonderful reception. So there was, as I remember, there was food, there were kids, there were parents. And it was a wonderful way to kind of cap off an experience that really resonated so deeply and so powerfully with the kids. So when I read those letters, it's a little bit emotional for me because I know some of those kids still, like they've kept in touch with me, and I know what's happened to almost all of them. So I know that this is an experience that stayed with them. My son is 32, so the kids are about the same age, and this is something that's still incredibly meaningful in their lives. So it was certainly a day that they'll never forget. It's a day that I'll never forget. And throughout the years, my students have had really incredible opportunities, not just to meet, but to interact with people that I like to call human rights royalty. So Nelson Mandela was one. We also had an ongoing relationship with Romeo Dallaire, Emmanuel Jal, who was one of the lost boys of Sudan, with Anna Heilman, who was a survivor of Auschwitz and a participant in the gunpowder plot, with my good friend, Minnie Jean Brown of the Little Rock Nine, and with others as well. So it was really those encounters that framed and fueled our classroom. And they marked those children for life. I didn't create those opportunities, though. Somehow they found us, like the Nelson Mandela one did. And what a gift June gave to them that day. What a privilege it was for them, for me. What a blessing, and why them? You know, why us? So, was it a coincidence? Was it synchronicity? Was it the gods of education? Was it the spirit of history? It doesn't really matter what it was. Whatever you call it, there was some powerful, invisible force that brought us together that day. And I just like to, you know, as an educator, I just like to point out that when we expose kids to these heroes, to these world changers, we tell them that they can change the world too. We don't remember or recall or recite history in order to dwell in the past. We lead children to learn history, to share history so that they can claim it as their own and find their place in it. And in doing that, they shape the future. I don't know if you heard this or not, but on Inauguration Day, Jill Biden had the words of Benjamin Franklin sewn into one of the coats that she wore. And these were the words: "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." So what was the lesson that those kids learned that day? They learned that history is alive. By meeting history, by breathing history, by touching history, they themselves made history. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Wendy. As I say at these talks, this is the worst part about Zoom, is that you don't get to hear people's applause. You get that silence, but I'm sure people are enjoyed this as much as I. Yeah, get rid of it. We're one shot now of people applauding. That's what we need, because this is a wonderful, heartfelt presentation. Although I will say one thing, I think as good as your presentation was, you were completely outdone by your students and their
I know.
Absolutely amazing. We do have a couple of questions now. I noticed one from one of our, just a whole pile of them now. See, people took my advice there. But early on, we had Sarah Oniango, and she just said, civil rights leader, Minnie Jean Brown, exclamation mark.
Oh,
And I'm going to turn that into a question. Do you know anything about Minnie Jean Brown, who is a civil rights leader? Do you have any information on her?
do I know anything?
Yeah.
I know everything.
Okay, yeah, I do. I am embarrassed to admit as an historian, I don't.
No, I know. No. Jean is actually my very close friend, and our kids call each other cousins, and they keep in touch regularly, and I keep in touch with her. So, yeah, I know a lot about Minnie Jean Brown, but I also know I don't know Sarah, but I know who Sarah is, and I know that she works closely with Louisa Taylor. So, and they have their pulse on refugee everything in Ottawa. They do phenomenal work. But Minnie Jean Brown was one of the Little Rock Nine, who were the first 9 Black students to desegregate a white Southern high school in the U.S. And it was a very big deal. In the end, President Eisenhower had to send in 1,200 federal troops, the 101st Airborne Division, because the governor had refused to allow the kids into the school, and he had blockaded the school and surrounded it with National Guardsmen. So, yeah, they had personal bodyguards for the first 3 months. This was a very big deal because in 1954, the Supreme Court, there's a case called Brown versus Board of Education, and the Supreme Court decided that there would be integration in schools. And the governor apparently decided that there wasn't going to be, but the law was passed that there had to be integration, and this was a test case, so it was going forward. And the people of Little Rock didn't want it. The governor didn't want it, so he did everything possible to stop it. So it was a huge deal. It was a very pivotal moment in the history of the United States. So
yeah, I'm embarrassed that I didn't know anything about it, but that's the beauty of.
No. Just Google it. Google Minnie Jean Brown or the Little Rock Nine.
But that's the great thing about Black History Month. It gives us a chance to get exposed to information that we wouldn't otherwise know about.
Yeah.
I do have someone here who's got a question and just wanted to add a little bit before. It says, I grew up listening to my aunt, who was a primary school teacher, complain about having to teach children from Africa. She was particularly hostile towards children from Somalia. My question to you is, did you encounter fellow teachers who were openly prejudiced towards some students, and how did you address it?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I don't want to call anybody out here, but so in our school, and then after our school was closed, they actually moved almost the entire student population as well as teachers into the next closest school that had a big mix of kids, because the whiter school that was close by didn't want us. So they redrew the boundary to move us into this other area. And it was wonderful because we just had more of the same kids. So we were really happy to be there. Now, and I was in that school for 20 years. So what have I seen teachers that were not very accepting of who was in their classroom? Absolutely. Have I done anything about it? Yep. Did they like me by the time they left? Usually not. But some people actually came around. The interesting thing is that I could have a class of 25 kids, and I could have 25 different languages that are spoken in that class, because some of these African kids too have more than one language, and they have tribal languages that they know. So we would have a lot of languages, and I would ask the other teachers who were a little hostile, or if not hostile, sometimes not accepting. They'd be complaining about a kid or a group of kids, and I'd say, well, where are they from? They didn't know. Like, they didn't know the name of the country. And it's like, well, how could you have them in your classroom and you don't know where they're coming from, because then you don't know the context that they're coming out of either. And a lot of these kids were refugees. to me, there has got to be a whole lot of education of teachers. And it's not any kind of sensitivity training. You need to know where these countries are on a map. You need to know what the languages are. You need to understand the condition that these kids are living in before they come, so that you can understand the resilience of their families once they get here, because they are extraordinary. So in a school like ours, if teachers really were not comfortable with those kids, they didn't stick around too long, because these kids can make you crazy. Like, they know who loves them. They know who's supportive. And if they accept you, you belong to them. You're theirs forever, forever. And they'll do anything for you. But they weed out the other ones. And for those ones who leave, it's really their loss, because there wasn't a day that I taught at school that I didn't learn far more than I ever taught. And that was simply by being surrounded by the kids who were there, and their families were very good to me. But my education came from them. So if those teachers chose to leave, then they were the ones that missed out on the education of a lifetime.
True. Yeah. One last question here, I think, because it is, tell us about your experiences with Romeo Dallaire.
No, then you'd have to have me on again. We had I don't like to call it a project. We had an initiative that kind of, I don't know, it's like a seed was planted and then it grew like Jack and the Beanstalk. And I had some Rwandan kids in my class, and the 10th anniversary of the genocide was coming up. So that would have been, so it was 1994, it would have been 2004. And the kids came to me and they said, what are we doing? And we did a lot of things for a lot of things. And I was a little bit embarrassed because I hadn't planned anything specific, or anything big anyway, to honor the anniversary of the genocide. And as soon as they asked me, it's like, okay, I needed to get my act together quickly. And we actually planned a prayer service and in our classroom, and we invited all of the kids in the school who were from Rwanda. And it just became something I had not anticipated. It became a really emotional experience. And the other kids in the class who were not Rwandan were very, very touched by the stoicism and the strength of the other kids, because suddenly these stories started coming out like a piece at a time. And after that, the kids were kind of a mess and we didn't know what to do. So we ended up writing letters again, and the kids wrote letters to the parents of the Rwandan children to acknowledge the 10th anniversary. And they also wrote letters to Romeo Dallaire. And as I remember now, I was always reading something, and the kids would see books that I had. So if I had 10 minutes at school, I'd be reading at my desk. And I was reading his Shake Hands with the Devil at that point. So they must have seen it on my desk. So they asked me questions about Romeo Dallaire. So we had a lot of incidental kind of education that went on. And anyway, someone ended up volunteering in my class, and she had a connection to Romeo Dallaire, and he was coming to something in Ottawa. Anyway, I ended up at this private reception with him, and there were probably 10 other people. And we took the book of letters that we'd written. But again, this was not the original book. This was a copy because we'd sent it to his publisher, and I guess he never received it. And so I took a Rwandan student with me. We presented him the book, and then he said to his assistant, David Hyman, just fix it. I'm going to go to her class, so fix it. And this was at a time when it was really difficult to have him. He was speaking at universities. He was brokering peace deals in different African countries. So he was really in demand, and he was very busy. And twice his visit was canceled. And the third time he came, and it was incredible. And then we had this ongoing relationship with him too. We raised money to send to a little place called Kinihira, which was the place in Rwanda where he tried to regain his sanity at one point. And yeah, anyway, we had a long lasting connection with him. So it was big. That was a huge thing. So yeah,
Wow,
that's
Wendy,
too much.
yeah, thank you so much for the heartfelt talk. Wonderful memories, I'm sure, for you. I want to thank you for this presentation tonight. And I got two more thank yous. I want to thank June twice. First of all, June, I want to thank you for the introduction of Wendy tonight. And even more so than that, I want to thank you all those years ago for inviting Wendy and her class to this momentous event in the first place. I guess without you, this wouldn't have happened, or this story wouldn't have happened.
That's
So
right.
thank you so much for being part of this. And Wendy, thanks again. Thanks everyone for joining in tonight. I think we all enjoyed this tonight. We're lucky to have guest speakers like you.
Richard,
Walter,
I've unmuted. It's Walter again, Walter Hendelman. My wife was the person who greeted Nelson Mandela officially and presented him with the Inukshuk, so I was not involved in any of these except as a spectator way at the back somewhere. I have no pictures. But I would like to congratulate Wendy for who she is, basically, and what she's done with as a teacher, an educator, I think is the better word, and June likewise. For those of your audience who are with online tonight, there is a website for the tribute, which people might want to explore. The Dalai Lama was the one who opened it originally. This is a people's project, which Wendy seems to have grasped intuitively, I think. This was a collection of money by the founders, and nickels, dimes, pennies, and quarters included. So it is a people's project, and I can only say that unfortunately some of the founders are now deceased and gone. I will distribute this, but it's a treasure what you presented tonight from such a totally different perspective. So, and anybody who's not been to the tribute, this is not the best season to go to it because it's kind of tricky to get onto it, but wait, spring is coming. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So may I ask, would you give Tina my regards?
We'll talk about that separately, please, June. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I can. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for joining in tonight. I just got one last announcement. Our guest speaker for March 31st, the next one that we know we're going to have, as Ben mentioned, is Charlotte Gray, the author of Murdered Midas. So I hope you'll join us on Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. Be sure to go to our website to register in advance. And thank you everyone for joining in tonight. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, June.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Wendy.